Alright, it's time to handicap the 2009 Kentucky Derby. This particular show we're going to do just a little bit of a preview on the strategies I like to incorporate and a quick glance over some of the contenders that I see to take extra look at. So to start with, this is not only a great race, it's a great betting opportunity. You have some things that occur over and over with past Kentucky Derby runners, and there's patterns that you can kind of follow after, and it's also a race where the uncertain happens, and incorporating fantastic handicapping with a little bit of luck or a little bit of a good feeling towards something can lead to extreme payoffs. I've had a lot of success in this race, and very few times have I been burnt real hard, because the fact that you can get quality horses at very high odds with very high payoffs, it's worth investing some money in the race and following patterns that have been successful in the past. So coming into this race, you play the 3-year-olds as the year goes on, and you get a good handle what you're dealing with. But coming into this race, you have to look at what has happened in the past, because this is the first time that these animals are asked to go 1.25 miles. So there's nothing else to go by but what has happened in the past. Who has faced similar circumstances and has been able to accomplish the Kentucky Derby. And as the years go on, I don't pay much attention, little to none, towards the buyer speed figures when it comes to lower level type racing. But when it comes to the highest level racing, it's one of the things that you can compare past years to the current, and that's one factor that goes into handicapping the Kentucky Derby, is looking for horses who have shown the ability to have top end speed, good speed figures, horses that are running to win this race. The average Derby speed figure is somewhere between 107 110, and if a horse has never been in the ballpark of 107, 110, it's difficult to expect a horse to go for the first time in 1.25 miles and do something that they've never done before. So that eliminates a big chunk of the field, because it's going to be obvious that a horse that is well below the speed figures that it takes to win the Kentucky Derby do not fall into my profile. There are some other factors, and I don't get into too much detail, but I have a formula that I put together that I give points based on how a horse has performed in the races leading up to the Kentucky Derby in certain circumstances. Success in the Derby is accomplished by horses who have the ability, and shown the ability in the past, to 1, run at a certain speed. There's very few surprises. 2, horses that put themselves in position to win the race. So you want a horse that is not always falling into trouble or trying to come from 50 lengths out of it, or a horse that's going to go wire to wire. You want a horse that's going to be able to position himself first or second, somewhere between the quarter pole and the 8th pole. And looking back over the previous races, you can see horses that have done that. I mean, that's where the running starts. And you have to be in position there, because when the horses in front of you are going to take off, if you're behind them, you'd have to run twice as fast as them to catch them. So you got to be in position. And there's some horses that run a favorable running pattern. And if you look back over the previous races, and you can find online the different websites, the lifetime past performances for the previous Derby winners, you can see in their past performance lines which horses ran that type of race, where they're somewhere in the hunt, barring any unforeseen circumstances, and horses that are able to run the right kind of speed figures along with that. And then in addition to that, you want to play a horse that's running against good competition. And now when it comes to 2-year-olds, the 2-year-old season, a good 2-year-old doesn't always make a good 3-year-old, but when you combine a good 2-year-old with a horse who has improved or has run just as well in graded company as a 3-year-old, you're talking about a consistent, sound, physically talented horse. And another factor in the Kentucky Derby is you need to have a horse that is in great shape. You have to have a horse that's in very fit condition in order to be successful. So that's why this week the workouts are going to play a vital role into how we look at this race. But going into we're about 11, 12 days out from the Derby, and going into it, the way that the math works for my formula, it puts, and this is no surprise, but it puts Quality Road well ahead of the rest of the horses on the top of the list. Now, you got a handicap from there, but looking at that from the beginning is a starting point for me, and so I will start off with him. Quality Road's a horse who broke his maiden with a 101 buyer speed figure, so he reached that plateau that they talk about, and he was racing the Aqueduct in November in a good maiden special weight race. Was successful at it. Comes back and runs second as a 3-year-old, and then runs a 113 speed figure and a 111 speed figure in the Grade 1 Florida Derby. Now, if you look at his timeline, he had been first in each one of his races when he's turning for home. That's a key factor come Derby Day. Now we're going to watch how he works out and how his big, hopefully half-mile work is before the Kentucky Derby to really make a final opinion. But leading into it, he has a lot of the traits that I like to look for in my Derby horse. He's the sire of this year's Breeders' Cup Classic, and he's a sire of Smarty Jones. He's known to be somewhat of a speed sire, but with the Strawberry Road on the other half, you're looking at definitely has some distance in there, and it seems to me like the elusive qualities that are able to go the distance are ultra successful. And there hasn't been a lot, but the few that have been able to carry the distance, they've been wonderful. I mean, they've won a lot of the biggest races in the world. And the horse that comes in number 2 on my list is I Want Revenge, who has run the speed figures. Now in the Wood Memorial, he kind of was out of position a little bit, but he was only a length from the lead. So you have to look at the circumstances that he was racing against. But here's another horse going all the way back to July of 08 who has been within a couple of lengths of the lead turning for home. Always gets himself in position. And if you remember in the Cash, if you rewatch the Cash Call Futurity Grade 1, he was boxed in behind horses and kind of jumped into a hole and then fired to the line with Pioneer of the Nile and battled him. So those two horses are right now, based on the factors that I like to look at, the top of my list. We're going to revisit them come after the workouts. So at the beginning of next week, I will give 2 sessions that have a breakdown of all the horses that we're going to be looking at. Another horse that I like, who's going to be a decent price, is the relatively inexperienced Dunkirk, who looks to me like he's sitting on a big race. Unless he came out of that Florida Derby and it took too much out of him, and I've heard that a little bit from what I've read and caught on TVG. But he's really fast, and he runs the kind of style where he can sit off it and come running late. So it's going to be very exciting. Pay attention to the works. That's the third major factor on who's going to do what. Barbaro was a 1 out of 69 bullet before the Derby. Street Sense had a great workout at Churchill before the Derby. Hard Spun had a 57 and change workout before the Derby. And you got to watch for a horse that's dead fit going into the race. That's always a major factor. All right,